Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. I'm going to record a video for you here to talk about the survey that we've carried out over the last week or so. The DV2025 results were announced last weekend. And so we've had a few days now, almost a week, where people have been responding to a survey, which I very much appreciate. And this is actually the first year I've run this survey. And I'm finding it very useful data. I'm very glad that we've got this survey running. And so I thought I'd give you the results as I see them from that survey. Now, let me explain a couple of things first of all here. I want to make a couple of things clear. Firstly, in terms of the response numbers, let me just show you my screen here. In terms of the number of responses, I've guesstimated, just a bit of a guess, how many cases that there could exist in each region. And I've guesstimated there should be about 30,000, give or take a couple of thousand in Africa, about 12,000 cases in Asia, about 20,000 in EU, 2,000 in each of Oceania and South America. And, based on that and the number of responses we've got, because we've got just over 900 responses to the survey now, which is excellent, very good. We've got 323 out of 30,000 possible cases, right, which is around about 1%, a bit more than 1%. We've got 159 for Asia out of 12,000, which is about 1.3. And we've got 281 out of 20,000, which is about 1.4%. We've got 73 responses out of a possible 2,000 approximately, probably a little bit less than that actually, but that would give us about a 3.5% response rate for all the cases. And South America, I'm a little bit less confident about this one. We've only got 19 responses. There could be about 2,000 cases out there. 19 is a bit low, frankly. I don't think it's statistically reliable. So, at 0.9%, it's much less reliable, funnily enough, in my mind, than the 323 we have in Africa, just because there's, several hundred people versus just 19, right? Okay, so those are the response rates that we've had. So how good is the quality of the survey, in a sense, is what we're talking about there. Let's look at the results. The results tend to show us that in Africa, we have case numbers fairly reliably up to 90,000 and probably 100,000. We've got a few cases which are above 100,000, some quite significantly above 100,000, but I tend to think some of those are mistaken responses. So I'm going to say that give or take a few thousand, 5,000 or so, we'll have a maximum selectee number, case number, of around about 100,000 for Africa. For Asia, it sort of goes up to about 29,000. And then there's a few sort of random responses in these outlier ranges with not much data to support them in the interim, which tells me a little bit that those are probably mistakes. And so the 30,000 is about the range that I think we can rely on for Asia. For EU, we have data pretty reliably and comfortably up to 41,000. Again, we've got some outliers. Again, I'm going to ignore those for the same reasons. They look like they could be mistakes. They're not supported by connected data in between. And so I think they are probably mistakes. So I'm going to say that EU goes up to about 41,000. In Oceania, got pretty reliable spread of information and data there. And I think we have cases up to about 37x, 3,800. So, that's looking pretty solid to me. I think that's pretty good. And then for South America, we do have case numbers up to about 42, 4,300. But again, I feel like statistically, this particular region is probably not well enough represented for me to feel confident in the numbers. Okay, so in terms of the findings, here's roughly where we're standing. Just to go over those regions again: 100K for Africa, give or take a few thousand. Asia, about 30K. We've got some responses at 29. So call it 30K. EU up to about 41,000. Oceania 3.8K, and South America 4.3K, but with a little bit of an asterisk to say that one's a bit unreliable. Now, let me just pop back to EU for a second. I just want to dispel a little bit of a myth that seems to be going around. Some people are getting excited about this. They have noticed that the range of responses here seems to indicate that there's higher density in the later number ranges than there is in the beginning number ranges. Just ignore that. Technically, that's not even possible. If you've heard my explanations about Hole's theory, what I call Hole's theory, by the way, Hole's theory is, the word theory confuses people. Hole's theory is a fact, right? In the same way that evolution theory is a fact, Hole's theory is a fact, right? And we just have various ways to prove that particular hypothesis that says, it's a definite thing. Okay, so we're not going to see density increasing in the way that this chart would suggest. What I think that's about is a couple of things. There's a couple of things going on. Number one, Uzbekistan is all going to be concentrated in the lower case numbers, and I think that Uzbeks in general are probably talking amongst themselves as a group and not responding to this survey. I've got a few responses from Uzbekistan, but not as many as I would expect. And so I think that sort of partially accounts for the low case numbers in those early ranges. In general, also, people that have higher case numbers tend to be a little bit nervous about their case numbers. And so when they hear a case number survey is going on, they want to jump on that and provide that information. Whereas people with very low case numbers are probably not quite so bothered. They're probably already feeling confident. Maybe they do understand that their case number is low, maybe they don't. But for whatever reason, I don't think we got those responses. So don't worry about that in EU. Don't start making assumptions on that. I wouldn't advise it. Now, something else I wanted to point out here. Generally speaking, the case number, high case numbers that we've got here are all less than the high case numbers that we've got in DV2024. Now, there's a couple of ways that can happen. It could be that the process that creates the holes, there are gaps in between the case numbers, the real case numbers. The process that creates the holes is possibly not creating as many holes. Maybe we've got, let's say, just for a moment, let's just assume, let's say we had the identical number of selectees as we did in 24. So in 25, we say we've got the exact same number of selectees, but we have less holes. That would mean that your case number wouldn't go as far, right? It wouldn't go as high, because you've got less holes in between those cases to sort of spread out the numbers. That's one possible thing. That could be the case. I hope it's not true, and because 143,000 people were selected in DV 2024, that was too many, and I would like to see less, frankly. And so I think that's probably not true. In fact, if anything, I suspect, but it's only a suspicion, I suspect that we've probably got about the same number of holes as a percentage as we did in the previous year, but we've got less selectees. I think that's what's going on. And so that's going to be in my mind, and we will only be able to confirm that in June of this year, or sorry, in July of this year, or possibly August. That's when we get the number of selectees, the official data on the number of selectees. So when we get the number of selectees for at least 2 regions, we'll be able to say, okay, we've got this many selectees, and we know we've got this as a maximum case number. Oceania is going to be our easiest to predict situation. We'll be able to actually work out that, yes, consistently, there'll be a consistent density of holes or density of cases, depending on how you want to look at it, throughout the case number range, and we know how many selectees there are, so we know we'll be able to say positionally what your case number means in terms of how many people are before you and how many people are after you and that sort of thing. So we'll be able to make some really good estimates in July and August, or July or August of this year. Same sort of thing will apply for South America, but I'm hoping we'll have a few more responses by then so that we can be a bit more confident about the high case number that we see there. For Africa, Asia, and EU, those three regions will have a decreasing case density rate. They'll have an increasing holes rate, to put it a different way. So although we'll be able to calculate across the whole of those three regions how many holes we will have, we won't know exactly what the distribution will be and when the amount of cases decreases and so on. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but we'll be able to make some assessments based on a comparison to DV2023, 24, and so on. So July and August is going to be an important time. And then the other thing that we'll find out, obviously, is in January the 1st, we'll get the SEAC data for DV2025, and then we'll know precisely how many cases we've got, where they are, and all the information you need. It's at that point that we can really make some accurate sort of predictions about where the cutoff ranges might be. And, I would just caveat that and say, even though we can get pretty accurate at that point, we'll never really know. We don't know what human behavior will be like. We don't know what embassy performance will be like, and so on. So predictions are, it's like you asking me, what's the weather going to be tomorrow? I can tell you pretty well what the weather will be tomorrow. But if you ask me, what's the weather going to be like in a year from now, which is really what predictions are all about, then I'm going to give you a rough idea, but it's going to be highly inaccurate. I don't know. It's just going to be a rough guess based on what the season should be doing, that sort of thing, right? So it's not going to be a very, very accurate prediction of the weather, in a year's time compared to tomorrow. In the same way, when we do predictions in January, they're not going to be very accurate. They're going to be somewhat accurate. We've got to be careful with that. We never really know, what the final case numbers will be. We certainly don't get precision. We get to number ranges. We say the cutoff is going to be about 30 to 35,000 or whatever. What we don't say is it's going to be 35,201. We're not gonna be that accurate. Certainly not, in January, and frankly, not even in July, right? I mean, up until the final visa bulletin, which is published on, between the 8th and the 15th of July, that'll be the final bulletin. That's the point at which we'll know what the final cutoff numbers will be. Not before then. Okay, so that's a pretty good sort of recap of where we are with the numbers, I think. I'm hoping that's useful for you, and I've given a little bit of an explanation of some of the other things. When will we know more data and so on? Be a little bit careful with this data. As I published a video a couple of days ago, it's still way too early for anybody to get really down and negative about their case number, because we just don't know what the number of selectees are. We could easily find that we would have a low number of selectees with a high number of holes, and that spreads the numbers so that Africa turns up at 100,000. It doesn't mean a thing, frankly. The case number that you've got is simply positional with other people in the region. It doesn't, at this point, mean that we can say, yeah, your number is certainly too high. We'll only know that sort of information, or we'll know whether a number is at risk or not, when we have the July or August information. Okay, everybody, I'm hoping that was interesting and useful for you, and it's answered some questions that you have. By all means, keep responding to this survey if you haven't already responded, particularly if you're in the South America region. Please do respond. We'll keep that going, just so we can check on that from time to time. But this is what I think of as the official update to the survey. This is basically it. I'm very happy, by the way, very happy that we have this survey. I'm thrilled Zarthisius is presenting it in this way. It's made it very easy for me to be able to talk to people about it. And other people have got access to the data because of this visualization that Zarthisius has done. So I really appreciate that. But also, as I mentioned on this video, this is the first time we've had this sort of survey. This is the first time that within a week of the results being announced, people already know what their case number means to an extent. They can see whether they're in a low case number range or a high case number range. And believe me, this is very difficult to ascertain in a normal year. I also have some responses from countries. I can look at that data as well. I can see where our friends from Nepal are. I can see where our friends from Iran are, and I can form some pretty good guesses about where the cutoffs on the selected data is for some of those limited countries. Right, so that's going to be very useful as well. So I'm thrilled that we've got this survey. I'll definitely be doing this again next year and beyond because it's very valuable information to have at this point so soon, within a week of the draw. Is frankly awesome. Okay, all right, everybody. Hope that was interesting. Please do subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you. Bye-bye.